Um, This is June 16, 2020. This is Mayor Rich Landsberg. I'd like to make clear for the record of this meeting, and it should be reflected in the minutes of this meeting, that this regular city council meeting of June 16, 2020 of the Woodland City Council will be conducted pursuant to Governor Newsom's Executive Order N29-20. This meeting will be held via teleconference. Council members will participate via teleconference. Their locations are not listed on the agenda and are not accessible to the public. The public is encouraged to listen to the City Council meeting live on Woodland TV Channel 20 and also by going to the City of Woodland's website at www.cityofwoodland.org/meetings. A member of the public wishes to make a comment during the general public comment or on a specific agenda item, there are 2 ways to do that. First, members of the public were invited to leave a voicemail message at 530-661-5900. All voicemail messages received by 6 p.m. today will be played during the City Council meeting and read into the record at the appropriate time. Any member of the public watching the live stream who wishes to make a comment on an item as it is being heard may submit an email to the city clerk at councilmeetings@cityofwoodland.org prior to the public comment on that item. Emailed comments submitted to be read into the record shall be no more than 3 minutes when read aloud. Please include the agenda item on your subject line. We're now going to go to item B, the closed session. Before we began the regular agenda, council met in closed session and there's nothing to report at this time. Item C will call to order again. Madam Clerk, can we move to item D? Roll call, please.
Yes, I will now take roll call. Councilmember Barajas?
Here.
Councilmember Fernandez?
Present.
Mayor Landsberg?
Here.
Councilmember Rodriguez?
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Stallard?
Here.
Thank you. I would like each member of the council to respond to these questions. Mayor Pro Tem Stallard, can you hear me well?
Mayor Pro Tem, yes, I can hear you quite well. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Barajas, can you hear me well?
Yes, I can.
Councilmember Rodriguez, can you hear me well?
Yes.
Councilmember Fernandez, can you hear me well? Councilmember Fernandez, can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you. And do each of you have a copy of the agenda for this meeting? Mayor Pro Tem Stallard?
Yes.
Councilmember Barajas?
Yes, I do.
Councilmember Rodriguez?
Yes.
Councilmember Fernandez?
Yes.
Thank you.
Madam Clerk, have you posted the agenda at a location which is reasonably accessible to the members of the public?
Yes, I have.
Thank you. The record should reflect that all council members are present for this teleconference and have indicated they are able to hear the proceedings. At this time, I'm requesting that other city officials introduce themselves and their positions so that the record can reflect their attendance, starting with our interim city manager, Ken Hyatt.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, Ken Hyatt, interim city manager, is present.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the City Council. This is Kara Uweda, City Attorney.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. This is Ana Gonzalez, City Clerk.
And Mayor, council members, I want to acknowledge the other staff members that are also available on this meeting to respond to questions or comments as needed. Derek Caff, Police Chief, Eric Zane, Interim Fire Chief, Chris Bain, Acting Community Services Director, Craig Locke, Public Works Director, Steve Coyle, Deputy Director of Community Development, Jim McKinney, Finance Officer, and Scott Sowen, IT Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Hyatt. Now, as we go through this agenda tonight, I would request that before someone speaks, please identify yourself each time you speak. For example, this is Councilmember Barajas, etc. Let the individuals speak and please do not interrupt them. I would also ask, to the greatest extent possible, everyone mute their phones so that we do not get unnecessary background noise. I would now like to advise all council members and the city clerk that any votes taken during this teleconference portion of our meeting must be taken by roll call. I would ask Madam Clerk to take that roll call for any and all votes. Now we'll begin the agenda, starting with item E, Pledge of Allegiance. I'm going to ask Councilmember Barajas to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Ready, salute. I pledge allegiance
Pledge
to the flag
allegiance to the flag
of the United
of the
States.
United States of America and
to
to
the
the
republic
republic
For
for
which
which
it
it stands,
stands,
God,
one nation,
one
under God,
nation, under
with
God,
liberty.
indivisible,
indivisible,
with liberty.
with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Councilmember Barajas. We're now going to move to item F. Madam Clerk, since the council chambers are closed to the public, is there a member of the public who has submitted an email or left you a voicemail for the general public comment portion of this meeting?
Yes. So two messages to read under the public comment. And if you're ready, I can read them now.
Go ahead.
Okay. Good afternoon, City Council members. I would like to ask what the city is doing or planning to do to preemptively avoid what is seen across the nation right now in regard to systematic police weeding out any bad seeds embedded in the city of Woodland.
Madam Clerk, hold up for just a minute. There's people that are not muted. We hear unnecessary noise. Please mute yourself now so we can listen to our clerk. Thank you.
Thank you. I can start all over. Good afternoon, City Council members. I would like to ask what the city is doing or planning to do to preemptively avoid what is seen across right in regard to systematic police abuse and weeding out any bad seeds embedded with the police department in the city of Woodland. If I can share my thoughts, opinion, and suggestion. All that this city council has to do is order a review of all their officers' records since becoming an officer. If they have too many complaints, lost lawsuits, questionable officer-involved shootings, internal, external investigations, or any combination of, to the point that they could not get rehired again today with those negative things on their job file, then maybe you need to just get rid of potential ticking time bomb and or hothead officers, and they should be let go ASAP, just like any other profession before it comes back to bite Woodland and that profession in the backside. No more letting the unions and personal friendships to allow this ancient practice that results in a lack of proper accountability. Please, not in Woodland. We can stop this in advance. Easy as that, as a good preventative measure moving forward. If you have done the right things all along, then there is nothing to worry about for the officers and nothing bad in their internal files. Sincerely, Paul Bradford. And the second general public email I have. Dear City Council, I am a parishioner at St. Luke's Episcopal Church and a member of Micah Forum. Micah Forum is a collaborative between primarily St. Luke's and Greater Second Baptist Church, an African American church, as well as other local churches. We work on racial reconciliation, building trust and relationships, and community action. This Friday is Juneteenth, an annual celebration commemorating the end of slavery in the United States. Let's celebrate with increased transparency and safety in our community. Transparency. I am calling on you to have the Woodland Police Department be transparent and give us the complete picture on stopping community members for walking while Black, driving while Black, arrest, prosecution, and decline to prosecute rates, etc. This can be done directly by Woodland PD as well as part of the District Attorney's Transparency Portal. Reallocate and reimagine public safety. I am calling on you to invest in our community and reallocate some resources from the budget of our police department. Our community is in need of investment in youth programs, mental health services, affordable housing, a swimming pool, and more. Let's reallocate some resources to those areas. community safety. If this next change has already happened, that's great. However, in the Daily Democrat, June 9, 2020, Hyde reported that the Woodland Police has also suspended their use of the carotid restraint last Thursday. Please explain what suspended means in this situation. Why not simply end the practice? Lateral vascular neck restraint.pdf is still included in the Woodland PD policy manual and is dated June 8, 2020. PDF pages 829 to 834 of 992 pages at cityofwoodland.org policy manual. Governor Newsom committed to working with the legislature on a statewide ban that would apply to all police forces across the state. And then there's a link to Governor Newsom announces new policing and criminal justice reforms. Let's not wait. Change the suspension to a ban on the carotid hold. Thank you for working to improve the quality of life for all in our community. Thank you for moving ahead with the emergency homeless shelter and for housing many homeless folks in motels during the coronavirus shelter in place. I want to thank the police department and the protesters for staying calm during the Sunday, May 31 demonstration in Woodland. Let's make this a special Juneteenth celebration by making progress on these issues. Sincerely, Leanne Herigstad. And Mayor Landsberg, we have about 9 voicemail messages that our IT department is going to play for you.
This is Ramona Rich. I would like to see more counselors, less police. Hire people like the well-trained staff at Juvenile Hall that we've had for the past few years. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Kathy Timmons, resident of Woodland, and I'm calling on the City Council to never again vote to increase the police department funding or budget. To propose and vote for a cut from the police department budget as we respond to projected COVID-19 shortfalls, to protect and expand current investment in community-led health and safety strategies instead of investing in police, and to do everything in their power to compel all law enforcement agencies to immediately cease enacting violence on community members. No more chokeholds, no more shooting at people. Common sense. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Brian Pellisier, and I am a Woodland homeowner and resident. I just wanted to make a comment about the proposed budget that you guys are voting on today. I would urge you to not go forward with that budget without a little more consideration. Just because we're in a pandemic, clearly, and it just seems against our city pyramid of oh my gosh, what's it called? Our pyramid of goals, our priority of goals. The most important thing that the city council has on its priority of goals is quality of life, and especially in this unprecedented time, it seems to make more sense to not increase funding for the police department, which it looks like we're moving a higher percentage of our Measure F funds to hire more police officers. Those funds could also be allocated to increase quality of life in our town. It only takes $65,000 to continue watering all of our parks, which is the only thing that we as a public have access to during the pandemic. We can spend some of that money on revitalizing downtown, which is on those goals, but we don't seem to have the funds for it because we're spending them on more police officers and other things. I realize that there's a lot of decisions in this, and I appreciate you guys taking the time to go through them. Thank you. Again, my name is Brian Pellisier, and I hope you have a great day.
Hello, this is Cody Howard. I live in the Spring Lake neighborhood, and I wanted to just make a comment tonight, a comment for the budget. I've reviewed the budget, and it appears like you are cutting a number of programs that are important to the city while finding a way to increase funding for police officers. Right now, the current budget for police make up half of the general fund spending, something like 26 million out of the 50-something million. And I don't think it's appropriate at these times for you to be cutting things like 65,000 for not watering our parks, 12,000 for firing the sustainability manager, cutting overtime for firefighters, keeping teachers in school funding, but decreasing facility maintenance. Excuse me, and putting off big projects like pedestrian overpasses from us for, say, like the dog park, or not replacing the turf at the sports park, or perhaps not even paying for the updates to the Spring Lake neighborhood elementary school, which should already be done. And you're using our Measure F funds to get 1.4 million in order to hire 4 new officers. You're going to hire 4 new officers during this time. And a couple of clerks, and also finding room in the budget for a bunch of new police equipment. This is possible, and I would suggest that you find a way to decrease the police budget, as that is a largest portion of the budget, and you could make up all your budget cuts by doing so. I appreciate that. Once again, it's Cody Howard. If you have any questions, my number is 916-337-542. Thank you. Bye.
Good evening. My name is Sean Glantz, and I have been a resident of Woodland since 2015. I am calling to share my concerns around the proposed budget for the city. So let me start by saying I absolutely recognize that during this challenging time, we need to be really mindful about where we allocate our funds. We need to make sure that every dollar is used to its as efficiently as possible. And we also recognize that where we put our money as a community says where our priorities are. Now, I have some real concerns about some of the things that are being cut, such as not watering our parks. This is one of the only outdoor spaces that we have during this pandemic to responsibly socially recreate outdoors. And we need to keep our parks healthy in a place where we can congregate and keep our community and our minds healthy. Also, I see that the environmental sustainability manager is going to be fired to save $12,000 in the scheme of things. We really need to be thinking not only of this moment, but environmental sustainability pays dividends. With money invested in that today, we're saving money for things down the road. I appreciate that the community is keeping teachers employed and keeping school funding the same, but the schools themselves are going to need to be maintained, and I see that there's decreased funding for facility maintenance. While all this is going on, I also note that the police department is getting increased funding to hire additional officers, purchase new equipment, hire new clerks. And while I appreciate the work that our police officers do in this community, I do not think that additional officers is our priority at this time. Additional police officers are not going to solve the problems that small businesses in our community face. They're not going to be the solution to addressing our continued problem with homeless individuals in our community. Social workers are continued to be underfunded, and yet we're trying to tack on more police during this time. Please, please, please hear the community's call on this. Know that we are watching, and that these decisions will have impacts on the upcoming elections. And please, please make the right choice for your community. Thank you. Hello, good evening. My name is Sean Glantz. I've been a resident of Woodland since 2015. I am calling to make comment about some of my concerns with our proposed budget. All right, so I'd like to say first by starting that I recognize that during these challenging times, we need to be extra mindful about where we're investing our capital so that each dollar can go as far as possible. And we also make a strong statement about where our values are as a community. I note that we are trying to save money by cutting some really important things to our community, such as watering our parks. Now, these are the only outdoor spaces that we have during this pandemic. We need these spaces to keep the health of our community so that we have places where we can responsibly recreate, go outdoors and get exercise. These parks are vital for our community and need to be maintained. I also note that there will be firing of an environmental sustainability manager. Now, every dollar invested in sustainability is going to pay dividends down the road. That is not where we need to be scraping money from, is by removing the few individuals who are really being extra mindful about sustainability in our community. I appreciate that we're keeping teachers fully funded. However, school maintenance, as well as additional things that schools are going to need to do to educate our students during this pandemic, and in the fall and in the spring, they're going to need additional funds to do that. While these cuts are taking place, I'm very disheartened and frustrated to note that the police department is getting increased funding to hire additional police officers, to hire additional clerks, to purchase more equipment. This is not what we need right now. If there is anything, if people are aware of the current situation, we need to be investing that money in places that support our community. Additional cops are not going to help the struggling businesses downtown. Additional cops are not going to solve the problems of homelessness that we have in our community. We really need to be mindful about where we are spending that money. So thank you very much for hearing my comments.
Hey, my name's Isaiah Greenagle. I'm a Woodland resident for about 10 years now. Just wanted to leave a quick comment. In cuts across the board with parks and ball fields and stuff like that. While seeing the public police spending stay the same or actually increase with new positions, somewhat disappointing. I've lived in Woodland for 10 years now, been in Spring Lake the entire time, and still can't get both of my kids into local school. It seems like the emphasis has been placed in the wrong place, and that's all I got to say. Thank you.
Hi there, my name is Kelly, and I have been a resident of Woodland for 14 years. And I'm calling just in opposition to the current proposed city budget for the upcoming year. I'm calling because funding for the police department remains high, and yet funding to many other services, including mental health services, parks and rec services, firefighting, and education, are all being cut. And I think this is a great disservice in how our public tax dollars are spent. I think the police department in Woodland is overfunded, and their budget needs to be cut, and these funds need to be reallocated to the city services that all citizens can benefit from. So again, I strongly urge the city council members to reconsider the allocation of funds from the police department, which is already well-funded and, in my opinion, overfunded, to allocating those funds to things that are essential for a society to thrive, again, like education and mental health services, and those are being grossly underfunded right now. Thank you for consideration of this comment.
Hello, my name is Nate Deland. I am a citizen of Woodland. I live in the Spring Lake community. I was brought to my attention through a friend that the city council meeting is about to vote on a budget change where you actually increase police funding and decrease other essential services. And myself, along with many other concerned citizens, are hoping that you would reconsider. Other services like education and social work, we believe, make a larger effect on decreasing crime more than increasing police funding. But I hope you take that into consideration. Have a great evening. Take care. Bye.
Hi, my name is Kelsey Villain, and I've been a Woodland resident for several years. I was just calling to comment on the proposed budget for the 2020 to 21 fiscal year. And I really want to request that we prioritize funding for essential services such as schools and also not deferring school maintenance. Also, I really think it's important that we keep our green spaces such as our parks functional and green, especially during quarantine for everyone's sanity since nothing else is open. So prioritizing green space, and then also request to increase funding for essential services such as social work. Thank you.
Hi, my name's Carolyn Madsen. I live here in Woodland in the 4th District, and I've heard rumblings of wanting to defund the police in our county in the various areas, and I am calling to support our police. I admire our first responders and the police officers in particular. Their lives are on the line every day, and they serve in a professional manner. I'm concerned about the claims of systemic racism, and I do not see this at all happening in our city. If there are any concerns, I think this needs to be deliberated and investigated before any action would be taken. I call in support of fully funding our police department. Thank you. Bye.
Are there any others, Madam
Hi,
Clerk?
this is Diana in Spring Lake of Woodland, and I am not excited about what is being put forward for the budget cuts. I do not believe, it looks like police are going to be increased and already 50% of the budget, while other important things like park maintenance and schools and teachers are going to be cut. I know everything needs to take a little bit of a cut, but I don't agree with how this is proposed. So I believe that the police should also have some kind of a cut during this situation. Thank you so much. Goodbye.
Mayor Landsberg, that was the last voicemail message, and we have an attendee who's raised their hand to speak.
Okay, let's have the attendee speak.
Good evening. My name is Jake Whitaker. It's good to see my friends on the city council again. For those of you who don't know me, I am a trustee on the Woodland School Board. And I come before you tonight to talk about the issue of justice. I have looked over the resolution that the council will be considering tonight to acknowledge the murder of George Floyd and to outline steps that the city will take to move forward as we go through this time where we reconsider the scope of our public safety commitments and the different ways that we address the underlying societal problems that contribute to criminal misconduct. I'm very encouraged that the council is looking to commit to having a substantive community conversation on how to address these issues. And so I wanted to make one proposal to the council tonight that we might look at establishing a citizen accountability commission for our local police department. This is something that our neighbors in the city of Davis have done, and I would hope that it's something that our chief and our officers would welcome as an opportunity to have more citizen engagement in talking about law enforcement issues. I think that it could be more or less a formal vehicle to sustain and continue that conversation so that we can be proactive in addressing any potential issues with our law enforcement practices. I'm encouraged to see that the council is looking at a full-scale review of the department's policies and practices. I think that having citizen input in that process would be a valuable additional level of insight. And so I would just like to put that forth for you all to consider. And thank you for your leadership on these issues. It was very heartening. And I saw and talked to all of you at one of the protest movements. We had 4 of our city council members show up and stand in solidarity with their community as we pursue justice and equality under the law. Thank you.
Madam Clerk, do you have any other emails, voicemails, or anybody that's raised their hand?
No, not at this time.
Thank you. We're going to close public comment item F and move to item G, council and staff statements. I'm going to start with Council Member Fernandez. I almost said Armando.
Thank you.
We're going to move now to Council Member Rodriguez.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a few things on my end. We've received communication from members out there concerned about available play structures that the parks were using for our summer city programs. Do want to relay to them. Some of them are already aware that starting today, our parks director is going to be opening the parks for public use on Tuesdays and Thursdays. The park is already open on the weekends. There's 4 different parks out there. Ferns, Pioneer, and there's 2 others. I apologize for not having them on hand. But folks out there, do be mindful that because of this situation, because of what we're going through COVID, we have to keep children safe, and we have to ensure that we're providing additional resources for youth in our community that are underfunded or that may need these services out there in the city to engage with other children. So please be patient with us. Please consider other parks during the times that these 4 parks are closed. We're going to get through this together. Finally, we got a couple emails concerning issues with speeding through some of our outlet streets. I do want to emphasize on the long range calendar too, that we, once we do get to that portion of conversations with council members, that we also look into Matmore Road. Unfortunately, this weekend there was an accident on Matmore and Gibson, and there was a gentleman lying face down on the floor. I'm not aware to this date if he was hit by a vehicle, if he was hit coming out of his vehicle, what the deal may be. But let's make sure that we are in full conversation. Staff, this is a request for you to look back around with us on your plan for moving forward with this conversation. Finally, I do want to ask staff that as we get to the budget, that we do address some of these questions that were brought up during public comment. Otherwise, it looks like we are slowly opening, and folks out there, be mindful of staying safe, using your masks, using that sanitizer. It's our responsibility to keep each other safe and to keep our families safe. That's all from me, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councilmember Rodriguez. Councilmember Barajas.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Landsberg. I just want to briefly just address some of the comments that Trustee Whitaker advised in regards to creating a Citizens Advisory Committee. I think that's a good concept, good idea. I think it needs to be fleshed out before the council can endorse that, be able to see how the chief and the police association could work with having a possible Citizens Advisory Committee and looking at the scope of it, right? You don't want to create something that doesn't have any teeth or is not going to be cooperative, or vice versa. The police association is not going to cooperate or want to cooperate with the Citizens Advisory Committee. But I think what we should do is continue to have those conversations to see if we can create something. Also been in touch with some of the questions from the community members regarding the funding of police and the practices of the police. And I forward some of those concerns to the chief. And the chief has responded to those concerns and addressed those questions very clear and very direct, that he is looking into the policies and procedures. My question is, post, post these incidences that have been happening nationwide, is there going to be a revamp of any of our policies moving forward? So any changes, any type of modifications beyond what Governor Newsom is requiring of the local police departments to do. And I think that there is some areas that we can look at and we can address and we can change. But ultimately, it's going to be about the culture, changing the culture of every police department, not just Woodland's police department. And I think that we have to look at the type of community policing, being able to address community policing by providing resources and support to our officers, and bridging that gap between certain communities that have been underrepresented and also law enforcement. And so being able to provide cultural training awareness to our officers as well, and just being able to adapt a different type of culture throughout the local police departments. So I think it's a multifaceted approach that we have to look at, and I'm in support of moving in that direction. But I have to also say that our police department has done a fantastic job. I know a lot of the police officers, they're looking out for the best interest of our Woodland residents and those that come from out of town into Woodland, and they're doing their best. But I also know that the culture can change from one day to another, and there possibly could be some officers not in the right. And so how do we make sure that those officers are held accountable? It's something that we have to look at every local police department. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Barajas. Mayor Pro Tem Tom Steller.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I want to again emphasize traffic calming as council members Rodriguez did. I'm hearing from people in my district regularly about this, and I'm observing speeding in the town. It's very disturbing to our citizens. I want this on the council agenda. I don't want to wait anymore. I want to have a conversation of where we are, how we ratchet this up, on a timetable for doing something. I feel like our citizens have failed. We've let them down on this. And I appreciate the fact that there's more enforcement from the police department, but I think we need traffic calming measures in place. Certainly in the older part of town, streets are narrower. It's a grid. It's too easy to use them as a drag strip almost. So we've got to deal with this. So please put it on an agenda. If anybody else objects to it, speak up. But I think it's time to get something on our calendar so we can at least know that we're on a path towards something being done. I really appreciate so many people calling in. It makes this Zoom format, to me, a way for people to address the council, and I'm happy to hear. It's obvious that some of the people who called in are under misapprehension. We don't fund teacher salaries. We don't maintain school buildings. I mean, that's totally a separate organization. We do have to face the fact that we're going to see $1 million less revenue next year. It's pretty obvious, and the money has to come from somewhere. I also think we've already put some economies in place that may be misunderstood. One of them, as I understood it, was not proceeding with the 3 additional police officers at this time. That's a decision that we essentially have discussed and made, as I understand it. I want to end by just saying that I truly, truly appreciate the Woodland Police Department under Chief Calf. It's a humane organization. I've done 5 ride-alongs with them in recent years. I see how they interact with people. And I think the citizens of our community would be proud of how our officers treat people. If I ever heard otherwise, I'd be on it in a minute. And I believe the 5 of us have a duty to provide oversight for that police department as part of our elected responsibilities. And I don't know if we've actually fleshed out perhaps how we can make that more real. And I'm more interested in opportunities to get just regular briefings at the police department and do things that bring into more contact with our police, even as I seek regularly to interact with police when they have their coffee with a cop events and other things like that. I can only say to our citizens, perhaps you might consider a ride along, or perhaps to go to the coffee with a cop, talk about some of these things. And I would like to also include that if there's no way we can not do the things that the police are doing, that doesn't mean they necessarily be the ones to do it. And we can look at all options and alternatives going forward. I'm all ears on that, very interested. But I think we need to appreciate we have what we have and not paint our department as necessarily being of having bad apples and doing a poor job. That's not true as far as I know. If I knew otherwise, again, I'd do something about it. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Stallard. I'm going to go back to Councilmember Rodriguez for another comment.
Mr. Mayor, thank you. I want to add, we keep bringing up systemic racism and pairing it up with our police department and the responsibility of doing away with systemic racism. Folks, I think that, as a council body, as a city department, as a government entity, I think it's the responsibility of the whole city department to do away with any systemic racism out there, or any idea of systemic racism. So I want to be mindful and tell folks that this responsibility is not just a Woodland Police Department responsibility. I think it's a full a city responsibility. That's it for me. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councilor Rodriguez. My comments tonight are very, very brief, and it's this. I do appreciate every single email, every single phone call, because we do hear you, listen to you. We do have a vote tonight on a budget. Some of these things that came up very recently, but we have a duty to have a budget in place by July 1, and it's already June 16th. So we are going to vote on a budget tonight, but there's always time to review budgets. So just because we're voting for a budget tonight doesn't mean it can't be revisited and be looked at down the road. But we do have a duty to look at our budget tonight. So we're going to move on with that item later on in the meeting. That's all I have tonight, but I do want to thank all those called and emailed. We're now going to move to City Manager Communications and Long Range Calendar. Mr. Hyatt.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. I do want to acknowledge the comments concerning the budget and assure the council and the public we will address those as part of the presentation on the budget later on this evening. Also, do want to acknowledge and thank both the council and the community for their comments and their input around all the events that are impacting our communities, and assure the council and the community that we are taking these very seriously. We have initiated conversations with the police department as well as all city departments, and we have initiated conversations with the police department as well as all city departments, and we will. All right, sorry about that. There's some feedback, but we will be reviewing the department's policies, procedures, practices, and training, and implementing adjustments as needed. We look forward to working with the council and the community on those changes as we progress throughout the coming year. With respect to the long-range calendar and some of the comments this evening, I want to call your attention to we have 2 meetings left prior to the council recess, July 7th and the 21st. On the 7th, we do have agendized the traffic calming update, which is certainly of top of mind for the community and the council members. So we will be working with staff to prepare a comprehensive update to the council on where we stand with implementing our traffic calming pilot projects, as well as the next phase of traffic calming throughout the community. And then also on the 21st, I want to acknowledge that we do have Woodland Research and Technology Park specific plan coming forward. So we're nearing completion of the draft specific plan document, and we will be preparing to release that document to the community in July or early August, and look forward to presenting that to the council concurrent with being released to the public. So, Mr. Mayor, that concludes my remarks at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Hyatt. We're not going to move to item H3, but it's a presentation from Barry Broom, who's the president and CEO of the Greater Sacramento Economic Council. Good evening, Mr. Broom. Thank you for standing by. It's one of those sessions that we're going to have because of things going on in our community. But thank you for holding on. And what news do you bring us tonight?
Good news. The economy is recovering. So a couple of things. First off, thank you for having.
Barry, this is Danielle here. I'm ready to share the screen for your slides whenever they're able to give me presentation ability.
Okay, great. Well, I'll just kind of give a little bit of a narrative, and then you can catch up because I don't want to take the city manager's time and the rest of the council's time more. So first off, thank you for having me. Sorry I'm not there. I'm assuming everyone can hear me okay. Does this sound all right?
Yes.
Thank you. So obviously, Woodland's been on a nice trajectory. We have an interruption right now in the economy, but our current economic activity as an organization is very high. It's a strange economy where, we've lost all of our consumer spending. We've lost a lot of our, local non-tradable businesses that rely on the larger economy to stay in business. Very painful, very difficult, significant revenue hits to our local governments. But we do have increased economic activity going on what we do from an organization, which is around tradable sectors. And there is, we've had 3 or 4 very good weeks. So it's hard to predict, but we actually think we're going to have a very good year. And we think there's a lot of active interest in investing in our region. And, hopefully this pandemic is manageable so we don't have a second wave. Obviously, we're worried about that. But from a move going forward, we feel pretty good about what we're hearing from the market, what we're hearing from the data. And then, of course, we will work hard next this year for all of our communities. Obviously, Woodland's tremendous development in a downtown. You're going to talk later about your food and ag park. Ken's team's done a great job in the community. And, our job is to build a marketplace for Woodland to participate in. So our job is to build a broad-based marketplace economic development strategy region-wide where we create investment and job opportunities collectively for all of our communities so they can be more sustainable, stable, and environmentally sound. We also want our economy to be more inclusive. So we do track how equity and wealth is being distributed across the region by race, class, geography. So it's really about a comprehensive look at the community, a comprehensive look at the market. How do you create a marketplace? And then what are the various strategies and tactics that you create around the marketplace? So from an organizational standpoint, you start with these great endowed assets. In the case of Woodland, we're the food and agricultural center in many cases of the U.S. Yolo produces 80% of all the crops. That's sort of the endowment, the assets, UC Davis and the community college. So how does that endowment and these assets and these colleges work together to create jobs and investment by being more efficient and productive? Then how do we present that offering to potential investors? And then how do we drive investment to scale in the region? No one community produces more than 33% of their jobs. So all of the 20 communities in the region that are working together are sharing people, sharing talent, sharing assets, and sharing capabilities. We have 42 CEOs on our board. They fund 80% of the organization. So the other key opportunity we have is, Mike Teal's gotten very involved in Woodland. You might know that. Mike got to know Woodland from Tom and Ken serving as the Food and Ag Council chair. So we bring the CEOs in, they carry the load. The public investors get returns and get services they can't provide for. And then we have the market condition. So when you do your food and ag park, you've got an entire market pushing that food and ag partnership into the Bay Area, into the East Bay, into Silicon Valley, into St. Louis, into Research Triangle Park, into Europe. And that's what we do as an organization. So Ken's team manages the local experience for the economic development. And then we have the market condition. So when you do your food and ag park, you've got an entire market pushing that food and ag partnership into the Bay Area, into the East Bay, into St. Louis, into Research Triangle Park, into Europe. And that's what we do as an organization. So Ken's team manages the local experience for the economic development. How clean's the town? Are the water and sewer roads coming in? What are the planning processes? Do businesses get good services? The region takes all the assets and builds a single economic model, a brand and the reputation, gives reach to the market that cities can't do on their own, provides services they can't pay for, and then engage the CEOs. So what I always like to say about our CEOs are putting money in our town, not moving to Texas for tax breaks. So you get a much better civic commitment from the CEOs. So that's kind of the big window of the market. All of our technologies, whether they're food and ag, electric vehicle, mobility, life sciences, cell therapies, fintech, all the industries we're working on, including manufacturing, are clean, so they're environmentally sound, and then obviously accessible to our entire community. So I'll take you through a quick, very dry data presentation and then answer any questions if you have. Yeah, so basically everything we do is to make sure we're providing returns, right? So if you look at what we've done as an organization, and we use applied economics and algorithms for this, it's a common practice. We can take, the $20,000 investment a year, show a financial rate of return based on job performance. We can provide a return on direct local taxes, and then we can provide a return on economic output. So it's an investment model. The CEOs are involved in philanthropy. The local governments are using public dollars. Those public dollars got to be returned back to the community in the form of income. So that's the first thing. The investment delivers income. These are some direct impacts that we've had lately. Go ahead. Go ahead, next slide. So the broader impacts are, our job primarily is to get looks to the community. So as this park builds out, we'll have the needed infrastructure to actually get more places. So we think our performance as an organization will increase 300% market-wide if we just get real estate lined up. Those of you that have been working on this park know just what a difficult journey it is to develop real estate. So, we need much broader real estate offerings. So as these looks come into the community, they're going to stick when the real estate offerings. I'm sure Ken shared this with me. Lots of companies coming to Woodland, but they can't find the real estate. No different than Davis, quite honestly, no different than Sacramento, no different than Folsom or Roseville. So bringing our real estate market up is really important. So this Food and Ag Research Park is going to be really important. In addition to build the market, we try to pay close attention to what's directly going on in our communities, and can we provide services there. So obviously, we'll be intimately involved in the Woodland Ag Innovation Park. We've worked in support of the forum. We've been involved in the Ag Start initiatives. And then, of course, we're now working on a broader food and ag kind of center of excellence. It's going to take a few years, but this is something we actually want to cite in Woodland because we compete with St. Louis. They have the Danforth Center. We think a separate, independent, kind of industry-focused, standalone research asset connected to UC Davis in Woodland could do a lot to leverage our capabilities of developing technologies, increasing working relationships with industry. So obviously, if I was on a call before this with a company out of Menlo Park that's looking at putting 50,000 square feet. Woodland is one of the communities. And really that entire conversation is analytics. They're asking us, what's going on with 18 to 34-year-olds in the region? So for instance, one of the things that we pay close attention to is how do you capture UC Davis graduates? So in 2015, we only captured 10% of UC Davis graduates. That's now pushing towards 53%. Our goal is to move that towards 50. So when people think about UC Davis kids, they would come up here from San Francisco and LA or Berkeley or wherever. Sometimes they'd be greater Sacramento kids. They graduate from UC Davis, they go to Silicon Valley and work for Google, or they go back home to San Francisco and LA. Well, that was just considered a common practice, and we didn't think much about that. But that was really a leakage of talent we couldn't afford to let go. So when we run these analytic platforms, part of what we're looking at is what's going on with our college students, how do we capture them, how do we build student entrepreneurs, how do we increase student engagements, how do we do internships, because a lot of the companies go on our website and they will mine all of our data and evidence. They'll pull our reports down on our labor statistics, and they may not even talk to us for months. So we spend $250,000 just on the evidence in the market, because now what's going on, especially with the transformation towards digitalization, we know a lot of these companies right now, they just go right to our website, assess all of our market conditions, and they may spend 2 months doing that before we get a chance to get in front of them, before they take their call, or before they put something in our market. So the analytics and the evidence is an incredible benefit, because no one community in the region can produce that. But by having like a shared economy model here with the corporate sponsorship, we can do it. Region-wide, about 14,000 jobs, average wage about $61,000. That's an individual wage. Household incomes in the region are in the 60 range, so that's a higher than normal wage. But you can see 4.5 million from all 20 of our communities for the last 5 years. We delivered $76 million in income, $120 million in income to the state of California. So on a $4.5 million investment, you're north of $200 million in income. And that's why you see Texas and these other states work so hard on economic development. It's lucrative. Challenging in California is we've grown at 3%. We've success to anybody without even working at it. And it's a challenge to get the state to think more about jobs, because they've been accustomed to so much success. But you can see how powerful the returns are on employment. And that's why you see Denver and Seattle and Austin and these other communities working so hard to build their economic development capacity. As soon as the stay order final phase is lifted, we have a Greater Sacramento Bounce Back campaign. This is going to be really about, just promoting a sense of optimism. We're all very exhausted. We've had a tremendous tragedy in Minneapolis. We've lost businesses. People have lost their job. People are suffering. And, it's our job to go out and reignite the notion that this region is recovering, going in the right direction. So we'll be spending $100,000 on that emphasis. We're going to be focusing on life sciences, fintech, talent retention, and talent attraction. One of the things we think that may happen is this social distancing platform. For instance, we know big tech houses have been all over our website. Are they going to build a building? Are they going to just tell 500 people to live in the greater Sacramento region? So the interesting thing about our economic impacts, it's not just to the CEFO or the consultant. A lot of this brand work now is going to go directly to the tech employees and former UC Davis and Sacramento State graduates that now live permanently in Silicon Valley. Because we think as those talented individuals are given a chance to work remotely, and they get a chance to revisit whether or not they want to live in Silicon Valley and pay that congestion, we think that our market has a lot to offer. Then obviously, part of this is an online digital tool that helps us with real estate. So when your Woodland Ag Innovation Park goes in the ground, we'll be able to create tools for that to virtually go into the hands of literally thousands of investment advisors across the country with just a click of a switch. And then of course the evidence and the analytics platforms backs up the site with the value proposition for why businesses should invest in the community. And my trusty colleague here is Danielle Casey. She's our executive vice president. She's a data scientist by training. So, I studied data science at the Holiday Inn Express. So, the only data I know is, thank God for YouTube. I could end up coding at the rate I'm going. But, a lot of the kids we hire out of Sac State, UC Davis, they have big backgrounds in statistical analysis. And so really it's a lot more about taking your evidence, building a market position, connecting that evidence to investors, and then trying to get them a physical experience in the community that'll have them do well. One of the things we're super proud of is, when you see like Amazon HQ2 or, Google builds 8 to 12 million square feet in San Jose. There's an entire professional industry out there. Sometimes they're embedded in E&Y and Deloitte and Accenture. Sometimes they're embedded in real estate groups like CBRE or Cushman Wakefield or Newmark or JLL. But there's an entire industry of national consultants that do absolutely nothing but manage and assess markets and communicate their value proposition to major corporations and industries. That's all they do. It's a boutique industry. There's about 150 to 200 of them in the United States. We have perfected our outreach and communication to them. We hosted 8 of them virtually about 4 weeks ago. So twice a year, we try to bring in, 5 to 10 consultants so they can familiar with quality of life and capabilities. And then those consultants are often in the room advising the Googles and the Salesforce companies and the Intels and the Apples on where to put their investments. So that site selection program, just having 5 visits is about a $25,000 investment. And when those site selection results are twice a year, the entire Woodland team gets access to it. So usually people ask me to keep this to 10 minutes, so it's horrifically short. But the simple short version is this is an investment that returns income to the bottom line. It creates on its own. It gives you leverage in the marketplace and partnerships with the CEOs. And I think Woodland's involvement in this partnership has been something that's really impressed the CEOs, as exhibited by Mike Teal's personal involvement now on certain Woodland issues with Ken and Tom. And, we think we're going to have a very good year. And we think our region is going to come out of this pandemic more attractive. Might take a year or two to get our jobs back, but I think we're going to come back stronger, more resilient. And I think we're going to be an economy and a community that, people are really proud of. So that is my brief presentation. Ken and Tom will tell you it's the briefest presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Broom. And thank you for your encouragement and your enthusiasm for our community. Does any member of the council have a question or comment for Mr. Broom?
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, Mr. Seller.
I'd just like to say that we are really, really fortunate to have Barry Broom managing this effort in our region. I consider him probably in a handful of maybe 5 in the country that have his level of skills. And he's a mission-driven person, and he's really applied himself. And as he said, the whole organization is data-driven, and he doesn't sugarcoat anything. We get the skinny from him as it really is. So we're not kidding ourselves. We are not performing like we should in some of our areas, and we need to do better. And he's making sure we do it, and we're working hard at that. The importance of Woodland participating is that our workforce in Woodland, maybe 30 or 40% of them actually work in Woodland. The rest of them leave our community every day to go to other communities in the region. So a success anywhere in the Sacramento region is a success for Woodland too. Correspondingly, the jobs we create here in Woodland benefit the whole region, because over half of our workforce comes into the community every day from neighboring communities. So that's why it's smart for us to work in a global way, regionally, with the leadership of Barry Broom. And Danielle Casey, our senior vice president, is very close to Barry. He mentors her, but she's phenomenal. She came to us from Scottsdale, which is a major success story as well. So we're well served by having leadership of this quality. Thank you.
Any other member of the council have a question or comment?
Just want to say thank you, Barry Boone, for putting on a great presentation. It really educated the public and some of the council members on what you do and how you've been able to impact just the local region, and how important Woodland is going to be vital in being able to create jobs and moving forth in that direction. So thank you for your expertise, and I hope to see you soon again.
Thank you.
Barry, I have a question for you. You have a pulse on investment and investors nationwide, and I believe they've been stymied for the last few months. What is their thinking for the next, say, 6 to 12 months?
I think, well, what's going to happen is people are going to shift behaviors. So, they're a little pensive, right? So, like big real estate deals, like MLS is probably going to get delayed a year. So, if you're building a $400 million stadium, you're supposed to break ground right now. Well, what happens if we get another round, right? You're going to have a $350 million stadium you're paying for and no team. So some of these really large projects are cooling a little bit. But what's really exciting is the emerging projects are now really rethinking what they're doing. So like the call we had earlier, this company was determined to go into the East Bay, and when we, in fact, Lucy, this is Lucy's deal, Tom. So about 24, got 2 degrees from UC Davis. We had the CFO of a publicly traded company on the call with us for an hour, and they were strategizing with us on how to change the CEO's opinion of the East Bay to come into our region. So we've seen a big difference in a short period of time, like literally in the last 4 to 6 weeks, about how people feel about our community. I think it's going to be people repositioning themselves. So you may see a decline in investment in the Bay Area and Silicon Valley, and you may see an increase in investment here because people are repositioning their companies. And that's why I'm so optimistic that we're going to do really well. Because now they're sitting around thinking for the first time in 15 years, what am I doing down here? Or if I'm in Seattle, why am I in the Sacramento region? So I think there's a little bit of caution on the big investment side, but I think these intermediate, medium range companies are shifting quickly and are ready to invest.
Great. Thank you for that. Anybody else have a comment before we let Barry go?
This is Council. Oh, go for it.
Go ahead. Go ahead, Xochitl.
Oh, thank you. Barry, thank you for all you do for our region and our state and for helping us retain jobs here and for all you do in fighting over there through the legislature to make sure that we are successful at that. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you.
Councilmember Fernandez.
Thank you, Mayor Landsberg. Mr. Broom, thanks for joining us tonight. Thanks for your patience at the beginning of the meeting as well. I definitely appreciate the significance of having a regional outlook or regional perspective towards building economic success and in the self-investment in investing in an organization like yours. I just have a couple of quick questions, primarily because I'm a economics layman. Could you just, and I know this might be difficult to do, but just kind of drive home how you allow the Sacramento region to compete with communities like Salt Lake City or Denver or the Silicon Valley or Austin. I mean, is this primarily a metrics driven sort of sales pitch that and relationship building effort that your organization is involved with? Could you kind of just, I know you went over the PowerPoint, but I would just like that elevator pitch of how you how you put the Sacramento region on the same map as these other communities.
Well, great question. So, so you got to compete on unique values, right? So it's about a unique value proposition. So what happens, and Tom and Tim will tell you, I pull the stops out on shame. So, when we're competing with Salt Lake, right, and taxes are 4%, and the government doesn't have regulations, and houses are $250,000, the first thing that comes out is cost, right? So Salt Lake's got this big cost advantage. And then, what we basically do is move the conversation to productivity and profitability. So a lot of what we do, because it's a CFO, it's a tax consultant. These site selectors are largely tax policy and lawyers and corporate liability guys, right? So they're in talking about our labor laws and our tax rates. And so one of the things we do is we measure what we do with tax dollars So there's the Rockefeller Foundation, and they commissioned a report 2 consecutive years. California puts more public money into things that matter to businesses than Texas and Arizona, right? So as soon as it gets into a cost, we move it into a value. Okay, you don't pay any taxes, but you know, go see if you can find UC Davis, in San Antonio. Go see if you can find, 40,000 students at the top 5 public universities. And at the end of the day, depending on what the company does, we focus on companies that are making products and services that are sophisticated, like agricultural technologies. So it doesn't do any good, big tax break, if you don't have access to the ag scientists and you can't deliver your ag bio product. So it's about unique advantages, size of our market, 4th largest economy, our cultural diversity. I think that's a unique advantage. Not everybody looks like me. And, not everybody feels comfortable in Texas if they don't look like me. So, you might want to be in a state that protects your rights. You might want to be in a state that embraces diversity. You might want to be in a state that cares about immigrants. You might be growing a business where you actually require immigrants to help you grow your company. So we just take them right into productivity, profitability, unique advantages, and then we tell our story. Depending on the company or the consultant, we shift the story for their value.
Thank you. One last question. You mentioned the need for the region as a whole to broaden its real estate opportunities. How's your organization assisting with creating those real estate opportunities, and how can a locality like Woodland, assist in the goals that we have as a region around real estate?
Yeah, so one of the things I can do for Woodland is I can help you search for a developer. So, one of the things that we need is developers with bigger balance sheets, right? So if you see how Aggie Square does in Sacramento, but Wexford is a company that can put $1 billion in a project and not lose sleep over it. I mean, they'll lose sleep, but they know how to do that. Our developers, privately held, they buy the land, hold it, and hope for somebody to come and either buy it from them or do the work for them. And so our real estate's a little undercapitalized. So one of the things that I would encourage you to do is do a great job at selecting your developer partner for your Ag Innovation Center. Because, if we can't get somebody that's comfortable putting up 100,000 square feet in spec and getting us going, or build some unique food and ag lands that are a little bit expensive, that's probably a guy that's not going to help us that much. You know what I mean? So, me, I think getting our planning models around employment centers, and it's tough that we don't have redevelopment. It'd be nice if the state gave us, and we need an infrastructure tool from the state to where we could go in and offset some of the development costs for these real estate products. And what we do, we don't have the capacity to do it because of Prop 13 and redevelopment being gone. We ought to be putting the infrastructure in for the developer and getting the developer to start us off with a couple 100,000 square feet of development. That way the company can move in right off the bat when they see it. And then, the developer can manage their capital costs on the real estate instead of land and development. Right now, we don't have those tools. If you're watching the Ramoses on Mace Road, they've had that land for 10 years. You guys know the story behind that. They've been holding on it forever. They got 9. Well, hey, can you throw up a lab? Well, we don't want to throw up a lab because we don't want to take the risk. And then it's like, well, it's hard for the community to trust that project unless you can make that commitment. So to me, we got to get better developers with bigger capital capacity. And I think that's got to be as important as getting the right industries.
Thank you.
Great discussion. Any other last comments, or we'll let Mr. Broom go? Well, thank you, Barry. It's been very informative. Appreciate your time, and no problem with the 10 minutes. We're good with that. We're good with that.
I bet you are. Thanks, Mayor. I appreciate everyone's time.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Barry, and thank you, Danielle.
Thanks, Ken.
That's going to take us to item I, the consent calendar, items 4 through 20. Does a member of the council wish to pull one of the items 4 through 20 from the consent calendar?
Stallard moves approval.
No, not yet. We're going to talk about item number 15. Number 15 is a presentation from June 2nd from Mr. Salinas. We had a public request for a summary of what we're doing with that particular item. Mr. Hyatt?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. So if you recall at the last council meeting, we invited Jesse Salinas, the assessor, clerk, recorder, and registrar of voters to come and do a presentation to the council on changes that the state has put forth for the election that's coming November 3rd. And specifically, he indicated that he would like to seek support from local jurisdictions in the city, electeds, as well as any staff members to help form a working group to provide input on promoting the vote by mail guidelines that have been put out by the state. Also to assist in identifying possible locations for voter assistance centers, as well as worker recruitment for the polls. So there's a lot of new issues that need to be addressed in the context of providing voting through a COVID safe environment. And so Mr. Salinas requested the council consider appointing a potential member to serve on that working group. At that meeting, Councilmember Fernandez indicated that he was willing to serve in that capacity. However, since the item was not agendized as an action item on the agenda, council requested that it be brought back to this meeting and put on consent calendar to formally make that appointment. So the item that's before you this evening is to consider the appointment of Councilmember Fernandez to serve on the working group.
Thank you, Mr. Hyatt. Good explanation. Since there are no other requests, is there a motion then regarding the consent calendar?
So move.
Motion by Councilmember Rodriguez. Is there a second?
Stallard seconds.
A second.
Sounded like Stallard seconded. So motion is by Rodriguez, seconded by Stallard. Madam Clerk, a voice vote, please.
Yes, and I'll take a roll call vote for consent calendar items 4 through 20. Councilmember Barajas?
Yes.
Councilmember Fernandez?
I'm going to vote yes on for I'll abstain from item 15.
Thank you. Mayor Landsberg?
Yes.
Councilmember Rodriguez?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Stallard?
Yes.
Thank you. Consent calendar items carry 4 through 20 and a 5-0 vote, and Councilmember Fernandez abstains from item 15.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Since the consent calendar has been passed, I'm going to ask that we read our part of the joint statement, which is item number 4, the consent calendar, starting with Councilmember Fernandez.
Okay. So the Woodland community, in light of the abhorrent and senseless murder of George Floyd in Minneapolis and the subsequent social shockwaves of protests and riots throughout our nation, it remains regrettably clear that racism and systematic oppression towards people of color remain prevalent in our society. It is painful to accept the fact that humanity in the year 2020 has yet to rid the world of the perils that shackle the dreams, hamper the hope, and stagnate the advancement of our brothers and sisters living both down the street and across the globe, simply due to the color of their skin. Unfortunately, Mr. Floyd's death and the death of our neighbors who look like him has been a common occurrence in communities of color and in communities of poverty. Sadly, the presence of institutional oppression continues as a reoccurring theme in the story of our nation's democracy. The tragedy accompanying Mr. Floyd's death serves not only as a sober reminder that both the traditions of oppression and racial biases linger in our society, but it also serves as a call of action to those equipped with moral courage.
Knowing the current state in which our country is suspended, this council understands the need for action at every level of government, especially the local level. How we respond individually and collectively in the wake of these events will determine how quickly we begin to heal and to unite. As your elected city council representatives, charged with protecting health, safety, and welfare of all community members, we respond first and foremost by condemning the acts of violence that have been carried out against people. We condemn all acts of senseless violence and hope and trust that these types of violent acts that we have seen in other communities will not occur here or anywhere ever again.
The City Council offers our collective sympathy to the families of George Floyd, Ahmaud Arbery, Breonna Taylor, law enforcement officers, and the numerous others who have died needlessly and tragically. At the same time, we recognize that words of condolences or instruction or judgment hold little weight when not preceded by meaningful intention or succeeded by effective action. Therefore, this council vows to begin a community conversation, which we hope to lead to tangible transformation in how the city provides its public safety services. We vow to ensure that the City of Woodland is a safe place to live, work, visit, learn, and call home for all people. We vow to strengthen our communication with all segments of our community, regardless of race, ethnicity, gender, religion, sexual orientation, or economic status.
The City of Woodland and the Woodland Police Department are committed to the safety and welfare of all residents. We take pride in the honorable men and women of the Woodland Police Department who dutifully and properly safeguard the inalienable liberties of the public. At the same time, this council will not tolerate the actions of any police officer or any city employee that infringes upon the rights of any person or that further the tradition of systemic oppression and racial prejudice. As a city, we are committed to expanding training for police officers and city staff, including, but not limited to training related to de-escalation, implicit bias, and anti-bias. Moreover, this council, along with our city manager and police chief, plan to review and dissect current policies and expand community building programs that empower residents and improve the quality of life for everyone.
Be assured that your city council commits itself to working together with you for equity through understanding, compassion, and opportunity, and to embrace not only being more inclusive, but also reject racism in any form. Words must be backed by meaningful change, large and small, individually, collectively, until we truly live up to the core principles and values of equal justice for all, a principle upon which this country was founded. We hear you, we see you, we will do better for you and with you. What this indicates, ladies and gentlemen, that this council is unified in the struggle that we're all facing. Thank you, council members. That takes us to item J, public hearings, items J1 through 26. I believe there's going to be a staff presentation on the 6 items, and then we'll hold a public hearing on each of the items. Staff?
Hi, good evening, Mayor and Council. This is Kim McKinney, Finance Officer. And before you tonight are 6 different public hearings for 6 of the lighting and landscape districts that we have in the city. There's a 2-part process that's required by law that we must follow each year prior to putting the assessments on the property tax roll. The first part of the process happened in May, where you preliminarily approved the engineer's report for each of the districts and then called for public hearings tonight. And so after the public hearings tonight, the council can approve the assessments as suggested by staff, or you can direct changes to the annual assessments, but can't go anything beyond the maximum approval. So there's very little change this year in any of the lighting and landscape districts throughout the city. Some don't allow for inflation, and even those that did had very little increases over the last year, so fairly consistent with fiscal year 20.
Thank you, Kim. We're going to open now public comment on item J21. Madam Clerk, have you received any comments regarding J21?
I have not.
Is there any member that's holding up their hand or want to speak now?
I do not see anyone.
Thank you. We're now going to close public comments on J21. Is there a motion then on J21?
So moved.
I didn't hear who it was.
Stallard.
Stallard, second.
Seconds.
Barajas. Vote, voice vote, please.
Yes, Councilmember Barajas,
Yes.
Councilmember Fernandez,
Yes.
Mayor Landsberg,
Yes.
Councilmember Rodriguez,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Stallard.
Yes.
Thank you. Item 21 carries on a 5-0 vote.
Thank you. We're not going to open public comment on item J22. Madam Clerk, have you received any public comments on J22?
No, I have not.
Is there anybody, member of the public online who wishes to make a comment on J22?
No, I do not see anyone.
In that case, we're going to close public comments on J22. Is there a motion on J22?
Stallard moves.
Fernandez seconds.
The motion is by Stallard, seconded by Fernandez. A voice vote, please.
Councilmember Barajas,
Yes.
Councilmember Fernandez,
Yes.
Mayor Landsberg,
Yes.
Councilmember Rodriguez,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Stallard.
Yes.
Thank you. Item 22 carries on a 5-0 vote.
Thank you, Madam Clerk.
Thank you.
We're now going to open public comment on item J23. Madam Clerk, do you have any public comments for J23?
I do not.
Any member of the public standing by to comment on J23?
I see no one.
We're going to close public comments on J23. Is there a motion on J23?
Fernandez moves.
Fernandez moves. Second.
Second, Rodriguez.
Second by Rodriguez. Madam Clerk, a voice vote?
Councilmember Barajas,
Yes.
Councilmember Fernandez,
Yes.
Mayor Landsberg,
Yes.
Councilmember Rodriguez,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Stallard.
Yes.
Thank you. Item 23 carries on a 5-0 vote.
Thank you. We're now going to open public comment on item J24. Madam Clerk, have you received any public comments on J24?
I have not.
Anybody standing by from the public wishing to comment on J24?
No.
We're going to close public comments on J24. Is there a motion for the item J24?
So move, Rodriguez.
Rodriguez moves. Second.
Fernandez seconds.
Fernandez. Madam Clerk?
Councilmember Barajas,
Yes.
Councilmember Fernandez,
Yes.
Mayor Landsberg,
Yes.
Councilmember Rodriguez,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Stallard.
Yes.
Thank you. Item 24 carries on a 5-0 vote.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. I'm going to open public comment on J25. Have you received any public comments on J25, Madam Clerk?
I have not.
Anybody standing by to make a comment on J25?
No.
We're going to close public comments on J25. Is there a motion on J25?
Fernandez moves.
Motion by Fernandez, second by
Stallard.
Stallard. Vote, voice vote, please.
Yes. Councilmember Barajas,
Yes.
Councilmember Fernandez,
Yes.
Mayor Landsberg,
Yes.
Councilmember Rodriguez,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Stallard.
Yes.
Thank you. Item 25 carries on a 5-0 vote.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm going to open public comment on item J26. Were there any public comments related to J26, Madam Clerk?
No.
Anybody standing by to make a comment on J26?
No.
I'm going to close public comment on J26. Is there a motion for J26?
Fernandez moves.
Fernandez moves. Second by
Me, Angel.
Barajas. Madam Clerk?
On my camera.
Councilmember Barajas,
Yes.
Councilmember Fernandez,
Yes.
Mayor Landsberg,
Yes.
Councilmember Rodriguez,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Stallard.
Yes.
Thank you. Item 26 carries on a 5-0 vote.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. That's going to take us to item K, reports to city manager, items 27, 28, and 29. Mr. Hyatt, do you want to start with number 27, update on COVID-19? Did we lose the city manager?
Nope. Sorry about that. Forgot to unmute. Yes, so I'll give you a brief update on COVID and our continued effort to monitor and respond to the changing conditions around the pandemic. Since our last report to the council, we have seen a slight uptick in confirmed cases here in Woodland. We are now at about 125 as of today of the 265 confirmed cases in Yolo County. The uptick is directly attributable, we believe, to the opening of new activities over the course of the last 2 or 3 weeks. So not unexpected to see that, and the increases are not significant to cause too alarm at this point, but it is a good reminder that as people begin to go out into the public and return to some level of normal activity, the importance on maintaining diligence around social distancing, mask wearing, sanitization is imperative. We do, though, continue to have strong capacity in our hospitals here in Yolo County, and Dignity Health, Woodland Memorial have significant capacity available for any potential surge. And to date, the attributable deaths to COVID-19 remain at 24. So substantially positive report with respect to the metrics and the cases that we're seeing here in our community. Also want to report, as the council has been engaged in several of these communications via email, we're actively working with our local youth sporting groups to get them to begin to start back some of their activities. While competitive sport events and youth sports are not allowed at this time, there is a provision in the state guidance to allow youth training and skills practices. So each of the local groups we are actively working with to get them to allow to access our fields under the guidance of the state. Additionally, this week we did allow the Woodland swim team access with a very well thought out program to allow them to use the Brooks Pool for youth as well as adult swimming, lap swim program. So beginning to see some of those activities be allowed to be open up to the community, and seeing very positive support and feedback from the community. But again, want to encourage those groups and residents in general to remain to be diligent with how they go about their activities, and certainly acknowledge the fact that this virus is still present in our community and still could potentially impact us. So we will continue to work very closely with the county and work with them through contract tracing as we get confirmed cases here in the community, and build out the knowledge and the experience with how to properly utilize that tool to position us to respond should there be another surge either this summer or this fall. So that concludes my update on COVID-19. Happy to answer any questions the council may have.
Thank you, Mr. City Manager. Does any member of the council have a question or comment regarding COVID-19 for the city manager?
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Stallard.
I'd just like to say thank you to Ken Hyatt, to all the staff. They've had to do a lot to keep our city functioning with all the challenges of sheltering in place and the like, and also all the pressures both to stay closed and to open up, and to find the best they could, the middle path. And I feel they've done that with our partners at the county. And we all have to keep monitoring the situation. I agree with the advice to stay diligent, know what your needs are, and respond to your own needs, but be considerate of others at the same time. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else have a comment?
Yeah, I do.
Mr. Barajas.
Thank you, Mayor Landsberg. Ken, is there a pattern or a trend regarding the increase in Woodland? Meaning that does it belong more so in the Latino community? Because that's what I'm hearing from certain individuals. Is there an uptick in Woodland in the Latino community? And what are we doing as a city to, I guess, to continue to promote social distancing?
Yeah, so I think good question. I believe the uptick that we saw over the last 2 weeks was associated with a Latino family that had attended an event. So I wouldn't say it was necessarily a trend, but as a result of one particular family that did happen to confirm case within that family group that ultimately spread. So it is certainly concerning, and we do want to continue to make sure that we're messaging the community across all populations groups to, even though you see life returning to normal, that we do need to be very conscious of how we go about our daily lives. And so we are with the county continuing to put out messaging on our social media as well as our press release pages. And, as much as we have all seen the encouragement to social distance and wear face masks, I think we're almost getting numb to it. So I think we might, want to rethink more creative and new ways to continue to send that message. But we certainly don't want to, get relaxed in terms of our support for encouraging the health officers, warnings and guidance around that.
Anyone else?
Yeah, Mayor Landsberg, Fernandez.
Please, go ahead.
I hate to feel like I'm beating a dead horse, but I think it would be in our best interest as a community to start approaching the fall with the mindset that we're going to experience what we experienced over the last few months. If the council will entertain, maybe we put together an ad hoc committee to start devising a plan with not only how we respond from a public health perspective, but how we respond as a community in an economic sense. Because, what concerns me is a lot of these businesses and a lot of these, well, I guess first from an economic perspective, a lot of these businesses that have had to shut down, many of these mom and pop stores, don't have, the resources or the wherewithal to, or the knowledge to properly market their services online if they're able to, continue operating. And, I think from an economic development standpoint, we should be trying to do our part to help businesses that have been struggling through this transition to gain access to resources to allow them to thrive in the gig economy. I don't know if that's too ambitious of a goal, but just a matter of putting together a fact sheet of how to, link up with DoorDash or link up with these other delivery services, or ensure that they can properly advertise, if they so choose to, through various online mediums, because not all of these businesses are as tech savvy as one might think they should be. And then from a public health perspective, I mean, it could be a very long fall and winter, and I think we should prep that it's going to be. And I know there's a lot being done at the county level, but I'm unaware of that information, and I'd like to get more info on what is going to be done from public safety, public health perspective as we move into the fall and winter. We can't ignore the inevitable. So that's my input. So I don't know if there's any interest in a ad hoc sort of subcommittee to keep the council updated on this issue.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, Mayor Pro Tem.
Yeah, I'd respectfully mention that the Woodland Chamber of Commerce has been active in this space, and city manager and myself have been participating in some group meetings with small businesses to see what their needs are and how they're going about solving their solutions. And I think probably it would be wise for us to rely on an existing partnership relationship to help do that, because it obviously is a need in the community.
Thank you. My comment, City Manager, is this: it's messaging. When our local government is telling people that this thing is not over, yet other levels of government that are on the East Coast are telling people quote, that this coronavirus is farther and farther in the past. Such hogwash is being put out in mass media forms. Here we're dealing with it on a local level with these upticks. So I believe that we need to keep our messaging strong and firm that this thing is not over. And Councilmember Fernandez is right. We're just waiting for the fall and the winter to come up when another surge is going to come. It's already starting a little early, and it's only June. Every day I get reminded by my spouse, my nurse spouse, about the uptick that she sees in the hospital. This is not over, folks. It continues. Yes, continue the safety net that you've been provided, the education that you've been given. We can't let up on that. We can't let up on providing information to the members of the public. I agree with Councilman Fernandez that we need to keep it up, don't stop. And I'm not sure if we need an ad hoc committee or just continue what we're doing. But the messaging is what's critical here. Thank you. That's all I have.
Yeah, Mayor Lansberg.
Yes.
Yeah, I just want to add to that. I think it's important to message, but also it's important to message the right way to the community in terms of, you know, the business community, because we don't want to come off as, hey, we're open back again. That's just, you know, all go out and we're back to normal. I think we have to constantly remind the public that we're in the middle of a pandemic, and we can easily move from phase 3 to phase 2 or back to phase 1. And I think that that's something that we have to talk about, because I know Sacramento County is moving into phase 3, but they're also prepared to move back to phase 2, phase 1, because they're preparing some of their department heads in the county with their employees that could be an option, or that's a potential option. And we should start moving in that, having those dialogues too, to start preparing Woodland residents and Woodland employees that we might have to go back to stage 1 or stage 2, and how that would look like. We have these plans in order to do that. Because I do believe it's far from over, just kind of like what Councilmember Fernandez stated earlier. So, you know, we just can't declare victory yet, even though we're moving in a positive direction. But at the same time, I think that we might have some spikes, and we might have to perhaps go back to a different stage. It's possible.
Thank you. Thank you for the information, Mr. City Manager. We're going to move now to item K29, or make that K28, the fiscal year 2021 budget.
Yes, so we finally present to the council after, 4 months now of being in front of almost every meeting with another budget report and point of input and feedback. So before you this evening is the proposed FY 2021 budget, which includes all funds, $185.24 million worth of expenditures that would be allocated, as well as within that, 54.5 million of the general fund alone. While the city's balancing the operating and capital costs have been somewhat challenging over the course of the last several months with new and evolving information. You know, we do have a balanced budget that's presented to you for this next fiscal year, but as we have consistently stated, the work is not over. You know, this year of all years, right, we were going to be diligently tracking revenue inputs from the state, particularly in the form of sales tax, reporting back to the council how that matches up with what our budget projected, and are in a position to take tier 2 and tier 3 budget reductions should those revenues not achieve the predictions that we're hoping for. So in the budget before you this evening are the tier 1 items that we've reviewed with the council before. The tier 2 and tier 3, again, are a framework to position us to quickly respond should our fiscal condition worsen over what we had originally hoped. So we will be as early as September back to the council with more information as we get sales tax reports, information from CalPERS relative to their performance this year, PERS costs moving forward. So it's going to be a very dynamic budget year, also with a lot of the pressures from the community around how we invest our dollars are going to be increasingly important. And we've made a commitment to the community to evaluate how we invest both in our public safety, but across the board. Are we putting the dollars that we have in the right place to maximize the benefit and the quality of life for our community? And so, as was stated earlier this evening, the budget, while the council needs to adopt it this evening in order to meet the legislative requirement by July 1 to have a adopted budget, it is in no way, a final document that the council cannot adjust throughout the year. And I fully expect that we will be back to you with adjustments as we move forward. To speak directly to some of the comments regarding the budget proposal before this evening and the police funding, to clarify some of the comments. So the police budget this year does not include additional police officers in it. So there's no additional sworn officers that are being funded through this budget. There was a recommendation to shift how one of those officers was funded. We do have currently and have had in the past 3 officers funded through Measure F. The budget proposes to shift 1 additional officer to the Measure F funding source to relieve some of the pressure on the general fund. But I do want to call out that we did ask all departments to present to us budget reductions this year. So 5% for all departments and 2.5% for public safety. So police and fire presented 2.5% reductions, and those reductions were outlined in the tiers 1 through 3 reduction plans. And within tier 1, there are public safety positions that are proposed to be eliminated. And then in tier 2 and tier 3, there's additional police officer positions that, should we have to reach into those reduction measures, would be impacted. So we are in no way protecting public safety in the police department from potential additional cuts. Also want to call out that this year the council did support funding for a mental health clinician to be added to support the police officers who often have to respond to mental health reports within the community and calls for service. This mental health clinician will be additional resource for those officers to help with those mental health cases and free up the police officers to pursue other priority 1 crimes. Also want to address some of the comments about the parks irrigation being reduced by $64,000. So that line item in the budget in terms of a budget savings is not a plan to reduce the irrigation levels that we currently have throughout our parks in the community, but rather reflects the actual costs that we've tracked over the last several years. We have implemented more efficient water use practices within our parks. And so effectively just reducing the baseline allocation to our irrigation of our parks throughout the city. I do want to remind, we do invest over $700,000 of general fund towards the irrigation of parks in our community. So a modest adjustment there, and again, does not intend to imply that we will be reducing the irrigation at our parks throughout the city. So with that, I will conclude the budget again that's before you this evening. I would consider as a framework for us to move forward, and we will continue to re-engage with the community and the city as we learn more about both the financial and the cultural community issues as they unfold throughout the next year. So I will conclude my remarks and turn it over to you, Mr. Mayor.
Mute. Have to unmute. Sorry about that. Thank you for the presentation. Does any member of the council have a question or comment on the budget before we take a vote? Well, you're right.
Mr. Mayor, this is Councilmember Rodriguez.
Yes.
I'll ask the question again because I believe I had made some comments and asked similar questions the last time we spoke about budget. Mr. City Manager, I believe what we had discussed, so I appreciate us conserving water in our parks, and I believe, that the community, the Parks and Rec Department is going to be overseeing what needs we have out there in the parks. Particularly for sports park turf replacement, my understanding is that we're not necessarily removing funding and risking not replacing. It's more so that we have an excess there for turf replacement, I think is what it was. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct. So there's a line item that we've had over the last several years to take some of the Measure J funding and put it towards sports park turf replacement. We do have sufficient funding already allocated for that project, and we'll actually be bringing it forward to the council over the summer for implementation this fall. So that is not a elimination or reduction for funding for that project, but simply a recognition that we have sufficient funding for that project in place.
Okay. All right. At any given time, I believe we have the flexibility if our parks are suffering in any shape, way, or form to come back and look at, I know specifically for the sports park, we have funding set aside for other projects, but I believe we have an opportunity there to shift things around if it's needed during this time, so long as we keep park funding with park funding. Is that correct?
That is correct. We do have the ability as the year goes on to evaluate something that is available and currently allocated. Also, if we find ourselves in a situation where the park does need more funding, whether it be Measure F or Measure J or fund balance, the council always does have the discretion to allocate funding throughout the year to support those projects.
Muted. You're muted. You're muted.
There we go. All right, got it. Thank you. I appreciate the clarification on the police officer positions for the community. I know the other two positions that came up, and for the community's sake, the environmental sustainability manager position and the community development deputy director position. As far as these two and moving into tiers 2 and 3, as you said, we can come back in the future and reset. Is that correct?
That is correct. So both of those positions are tier 2. So before any of those positions are affected, we will be back to the council with an update as to where we stand with the budget. And the council will have an opportunity at that time to affirm those budget cuts or identify other ones as well.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Hearing none, is there a motion on?
All right, Fernandez, one quick comment, if I could.
Councilman Fernandez?
I just wanted to address, the need for, or the request by some, and I think the general trend nationwide related to, defunding or reformulating the composition of our police department. Individually, I personally, I feel like, that's something I'm open to, but it's going to take more than just, altering this budget and the way it is now. I think we need to have community input before we act to ensure that our police department continues to effectively serve our community. And I'm not necessarily saying I'm a proponent of defunding, but I'm always a proponent of reconstructing the way we provide services to our community to ensure that the health and safety and welfare of all residents is adequately maintained.
Thank you. Any last comments?
Mayor Landsberg, I do have 2 emails.
I was just going to say, is there any public comment on item K28? You have 2 emails.
Yes.
Madam Clerk.
Thank you. I, Kathy Holcomb, resident of Woodland since 2007, call on the City Council to raise funding for the police department and put those funds to better use by more fully investing in community-led health and safety strategies. Police should deal with crime, period. To do everything in your power to compel all law enforcement agencies to immediately cease enacting violence on community members. To read, consider the excellent solutions proposed by the ex-cop author and to take to heart this essay. She directs to a website, medium.com, and the article is Confessions of a Former Bastard Cop. Right now, cities across the country are rethinking municipal budgets and reevaluating whether the police are doing jobs they were never intended to do. Packing a gun and the attitude that goes with one has shown time and again to turn a non-criminal situation into a violent one. We have a unique opportunity to cut the spending of police forces that consume ever larger shares of city budget. In Woodland, this would result in thousands of dollars in savings that can be reinvested in a shared vision of community, safety, infrastructure, and recovery that does not rely on the police. Thank you. And I have one more. Dear City Council members, due to the current events, bring light to the injustices minorities face in our city and nation, I believe we should take time and make the commitment to re-envision the role of policing in our community. We should not increase spending for the police. Instead, we should reallocate and shift resources to education, social justice reform, mental health, homeless, low-income housing, community-based programs, and the arts. We have seen an increase in gang activity and violence. We should find ways for the police to work in tandem with social agencies to address the problems plaguing our community and lift it up. Please vote no to any increases of funding for police. Sincerely, Linda Fitzgibbon, Devon Hoff, Woodland, California.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Anybody wave a hand or?
Mr. Mayor, this is Councilmember Rodriguez. I have a question for the city manager or for budget staff or public safety for that matter. So we did do an increase for Measure F funding for fire and police staffing, but I'm looking right now at the, it's 1.4 increase from 1.1 million. Let me jump to the correct line here. Can we clarify for the public what the one-time funds in support of police equipment and training are for? Like specifically what it is that we're providing those one-time funds for?
Absolutely, Councilmember Rodriguez. I believe Chief Caff is listening in, and he could probably best respond to that. Chief Caff.
Yes. Hello, everybody. Chief Caff here. So those increase in fundings are specifically the California Department of Peace Officer Standards and Training has mandated that we complete every 2 years emergency vehicle operations course training. That is what that money is for. That is going to ensure that the officers receive the absolute best training in a extremely high liability task, which is driving. So that's where that money is going. And then the second item is the replacement of bulletproof vests. So that is a critical need for our staff. My staff has already taken over 30 guns off the street so far in 2020 alone. We've had over a dozen shootings in town already. And so the need to outfit them with bulletproof vests is absolutely essential. We are totally open to having further conversations about our policies, our practices, and how we see policing in Woodland in the future. That's something that we've already been doing already. And I look forward to educating the council and the community more on that in the near future.
Thank you for that, Chief Caff. This is Councilmember Rodriguez again. I think let's continue these conversations. I do want to highlight to the community that prior, to COVID coming into place and, to all these tragedies that we're surrounded by, I did have conversations with community members who wanted more patrolling for speeding, who wanted more patrolling for the homeless. I want to highlight to community members out there that we are already making cuts to all departments, and we're going to see some hour cuts as well, potentially furloughs out there. We don't know what that's going to look like at the moment, but our police department does do work for our youth programming in our schools. They do programming for our 4th and 7th graders out there, and they help our kids transition from middle school to high school, what you may have, and they work very closely with other youth out there who are at risk. And so they also, as a lot of you know, they work through the host program to clean up camps and ensure that we're taking care of our homeless and getting them off the street. And so that topic did come up during the initial public comments about, spending money on things such as youth programs and homeless and not police officers. But, many folks sometimes don't make the connection that our police department works these other areas through the great programs, through our summer programs with our youth out there in the city. And so we're all struggling. All departments are going to be affected in some way. I'm grateful that we have our police department in place, our fire department. As some of you know, our public safety academy is out there. So all of the funding there, whether it's general fund or Measure J, you name it, impacts all departments. And at the same time, we do support our youth and our objectives and goals for preventing homelessness out there through our public safety department. So I would like for our community to be mindful of that. And as our city manager explained, we're not filling extra or hiring additional positions. That's all for me, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes?
Yes, I'd just like to say a few things.
Yes.
Yeah, just quick. I think some of the community members who expressed during their public comment was directed towards the demilitarization of the police. And, if there's any type of, any type of military equipment that might not be useful in our police department. Also looking at like trainings and policies and procedures, kind of like what the chief is open to looking at. So I think that's something that some of the community members are looking at is, to what degree, what type of equipment do they need and we should support, and what type of other equipment that is too much for a community like Woodland, and to be able to shift some of those resources and those monies away from that into different areas of services for our residents.
Thank you, Councilmember Barajas. Any other comments?
Mr. Mayor?
I'll go for it, Councilmember Steller.
Or Mayor Pro Tem Steller.
I just wanted to point out that our police department has operated a citizens police academy at least a couple of years now, and they're taking signups for it currently. They had to cut the class size down to 15 this year because of the COVID implications of groups. But I think people who want to learn more about our police department might consider participating in such a class because there's a lot of things going on, and I think it's easy to talk in philosophical terms, but you'd really have to become informed about all the implications of these decisions. I'm really glad we're going to have more conversation about this. I think it's healthy, and we'll all be in a better place eventually, and we'll find refinements that we can make, and maybe some major changes as well. But it didn't just happen to get the way it is. It got that way for a lot of reasons, and I think perhaps everybody needs to operate from a basis of, let's just say, the same knowledge basis. Again, it's using data to inform and lead us to make good decisions. So, thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Rodriguez.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. So I appreciate the comments on delivering information. Stand in line with my colleagues. So that said, it's going to be very important how we present the information to the community. Chief Caff, I'll connect with you offline. I think the idea of a potential police advisory, community police advisory board or commission could serve us for this purpose. But we can chat about that later. But otherwise, that's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you. The only comment I have is this, that I'm not about to put an officer out there without the proper safety equipment. That's ridiculous. Not going to happen on my watch. These officers risk their life every single day, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. But people want to believe they're not right along with an officer on a swing shift or grave shift. See for yourself what happens every single day. Chief just told us they've taken 30 guns and it's barely June. You had how many shootings? 12 shootings so far this year. I don't want to see any shootings. It would be great. It'd be wonderful if we didn't need police officers, but we do. There are people in our community that don't care. They're criminal for whatever reason, whatever station in life they have. They're hell-bent on committing crimes. We need people in our police department to keep us safe, to keep all of us safe. There's 60,000 people in this community, and our small department covers all 60,000 people. So don't ask me to do away with these people who risk their lives every day. It's not going to happen. I'm not going to recommend it. They need vehicles. They need weapons to fight the people that want to hurt them. Believe it or not, folks, there are people who want to hurt these kids, and there are kids every single day. So when it comes to safety equipment and proper training, you have my backing, Chief Cap, that your department's going to get it. However, having said that, there is room for discussion on some things that we do work in, and I'm open to that. But when it comes to safety equipment, there's no discussion for that, in my opinion. Thank you. Is there a motion on the budget?
Hernandez moves.
Second,
Hernandez
Rodriguez.
moved the budget, and Rodriguez seconded. Madam Clerk?
Barajas,
Yeah.
Councilmember Fernandez,
Yes.
Mayor Landsberg,
Yes.
Councilmembers Rodriguez,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Stallard.
Yes.
Thank you. Item 28 carries on a 5-0 vote.
Thank you. That takes us to item K29, approval of emergency homeless shelter project. Mr. City Manager.
Yes, I will provide a brief introduction as Mr. Coyle is preparing to upload his slides for the presentation. I think as the council is acutely aware, the topic of homelessness is paramount across the community. And I don't think any one of us can go a day at work or living our lives here in this community without running across somebody that expresses concern about the impacts or the well-being of the homeless in our community. And so as the council is aware, the city has identified the need and desire to build an emergency homeless shelter at property owned by the city on East Beamer Way near 102. Over the course of the last 6-8 months, we've been actively advancing that project with the goal of having that shelter up and operational before the end of the year. So we're pleased to present to you this evening a very significant action that will allow us to move forward with the construction of that shelter and be able to achieve that goal. See that Steve has been able to upload his slides. And Steve, if you're available to take over from here, I'll have you walk through the actions this evening and a little bit background on the project, and look forward to council questions before taking action.
Thank you, Ken. Assuming you can hear me. Good evening, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, council members. Before you tonight, I'll have about 10 slides. But before you tonight are staff recommendations for 8 actions regarding the funding, the construction, and the operations of the emergency homeless shelter at, at 102 East Beamer. I recognize that this project has been a long time coming, and there's some, there's been some challenges that we've had to confront, including COVID, but we're at the point now where we're ready to move forward. So what I'll show you is, first of all, I wanted to point out that This shelter it was designed and development by city staff with the leadership of the city managers, the two city managers. It's being funded by the city, by the county, and with some assistance from Friends of the Mission. The construction we're bringing forward tonight is a contract with Broward Builders. The shelter will be operated by Fourth and Hope, but it will be owned by Friends of the Mission. So once the shelter is completed, the property and the shelter would be turned over to Friends of Mission as the owner. So the city wouldn't be a landlord and be responsible for the facility. Okay. This is just a shot of the site, which I think most of you have seen this slide or some version of it. Located, the proper address is 1901 East Beamer, the corner of 102, County Road 102 in East Beamer. And it's the reclaimed land portion of the city's 120-acre site, and it's in the county, so it's not in the city jurisdiction. It's in the county. So the entitlement process eventually for the East Beamer Way project will be through the county at this point. Just a zoom of the site, as you're probably been tagging along for the last year or so, with this project has reached this level of fruition. The shelter is actually in 3 phases. Tonight, we're looking at the construction of the shelter, which is at the southmost part of the East Beamer Way site. The shelter will be followed by the Housing and Community Center, the 61 units of permanent supportive housing, and then eventually Walter's House, the Drug and Alcohol Treatment Center at the north end. One of the reasons this took so long is because the site was originally oriented on an east-west axis, and because of the flood issues, we had to reorient the project, which is actually, I think, works out better, and I'll explain why in a minute. So this is just a zoom of the site plan that's part of the construction documents. So you'll see that the shelter is actually composed of 2 phases. The first shelter, phase 1, which is what we're going to build in the next few months, starting Monday, is where people will live. To the north is a women's area, to the south is the men's area, and then a dining or assembly area in the middle with 4 offices. So this is what we're going to build now. It's a building that's 50 feet wide by about 130 feet long. And but the idea here is that when funds are available, Friends of Mission will build the second phase, which will include the kitchen, toilets, and storage and other facilities. So in the meantime, since we're not going to see the second phase of the shelter, what we're doing is the city will purchase 4 mobile trailers, which will include men's and women's toilet facilities and 8 washer, 8 dryer laundry, and a commercial kitchen. Actually, we found a used commercial kitchen, which will provide many more meals than will be required. So, but we have getting a good price on it. This is what this is just a elevation of the building, the 2 side elevations, which are facing east and west. And if you're standing on or driving by East Beamer, what you'll see is a narrower profile of the building, which is what you see at the top elevation. So I think it's good because from an architectural perspective, we're putting a relatively small image that people will see from as they pass by East Beamer Way. So the bulk of the site will be heading north. And this is a quick shot of what the trailers will look like. Not precisely like this, but you know, For example, the bathroom trailers will be individual compartments, each with a bathroom, with a toilet, sink, and shower, and then the laundry, and then this large commercial kitchen facility. So I wanted to just run through here the what I call the outcomes here, which is first of all, starting with what is this accomplishing? What are our objectives and what we're trying to accomplish? So first of all, we're going from a shelter downtown at 4th and Hope with 48 beds, which has rendered really an important service to the community. But on the other hand, the individuals who require these beds are also in the street, and and there was a recognized need to first of all, to expand the shelter, but also to relocate it out of the downtown where it wouldn't have such an adverse effect on the residences and the businesses. The other benefit is once the shelter is up, the existing facilities at 4th and Hope will be refitted into a family shelter that will expand from 17 beds to a new family shelter of 44 beds with individual compartments. So instead of families being sequestered into one or a few spaces, they'll actually have individual family areas. The shelter funding, which Dan Sokola is available to answer specific questions about this. And it's one of the shelters construction funding is also part of the 8 actions that we'll be bringing forward after this presentation. First of all, the city of Woodland is committing $1,400,000 in funding. The county of Yolo will $500,000, and then Friends of Mission $400,000. So this is the way that we're funding the shelter, and one of the reasons it's taken a while to get to this point is trying to secure that funding, obtain that funding. The shelter construction, the construction and occupancy shelter. First of all, Broward Construction, pending adoption of the agreement tonight, will mobilize a week from yesterday, on Monday. They'll actually start working on the site on Monday. They will complete construction by or before November 13th. So my proposal is to occupy the new shelter over the week, begin occupying the shelter over the weekend of November 15th. And after the completion of the shelter, pending receipt of the sufficient amount of funding for the housing, which we're actually close to, the housing will commence following the shelter. So the idea is to finish the shelter, move into and complete the housing and this little community center and health center. And then finally, I wanted to just point out that one of the ways that we're being able to fund the shelter is by purchasing the trailers through the city's community block grant, the CARES Act, which has an allocation of $302,000. And we need to hold off. We're going to bring this to council July 7th or perhaps later, but we need to go through a few other, complete some other issues before we bring that to council. But that's the idea, is the shelter construction is actually funded through the city, the county, and the Friends, and then the trailers will be paid for by the block grant. So before you tonight are 8 actions, and they vary from the continuation of the emergency action to authorizing the city manager to proceed with the shelter. So what I have done is, because of the text size, I've broken this up into 2 different slides. But before I go through the actions, I wanted to leave time for questions or comments.
Thank you, Steve. The member of the council have a question or comment for Steve or the city manager on this project?
Mr. Mayor, I have a question.
Councilman Rodriguez?
Once this campus is up and running, and this may be a separate conversation after the fact, are we going to have the board members of Fourth and Hope and the staff over there provide us with updates of the services they're providing as they're moving along?
Councilmember Rodriguez, I actually tried to reach Doug Zeck tonight. It's his, I think it's his 35th wedding anniversary, so he is not available, but he is ready to address council on the operational side, which is, as or more important than the construction of this. And I think he would do a better job than I can, or perhaps the city manager may want to make some comments. But if in your package is the operational operational agreement with Fourth and Hope, and in that operational agreement, it outlines who's responsible for what, and you can see that it lays out precisely what the Fourth and Hope is responsible for in their operations.
Perfect. Okay.
Councilman
I'm looking at it right now.
Let me just add real quick, the operating agreement that is included for action this evening for you would be an agreement between the city and Friends of the Mission, who would, Fourth and Hope, who would ultimately operate the shelter. As part of that operating agreement, we have stipulated fairly robust requirement for reporting for the services provided, budgetary reporting, and the outcomes of those that are served. So absolutely, as part of the agreements here as we move forward, we will ensure that the necessary outcomes and the reports associated with reporting that will be included and provided to the council and the community.
I think there was another question or comment. Is that right?
Just a comment from Fernandez, Mayor Landsberg. Yeah, I want to thank staff for their hard work on this. This is a huge milestone in the city's effort to address the homelessness crisis. So thank you for your diligence, and looking forward to see the campus out there and the partnership we continue to foster with Friends of the Mission and Fourth and Hope.
Any other comments or questions?
Yeah, I do, Mayor Landsberg.
Councilmember Ajas?
Yes, it's a question. First is a question and comment. Steve, out of the 1.4 million for the construction shelter, how much is that for that would be for the temporary emergency shelter, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So when it becomes permanent, how much of that 1.4 million is going to remain in effect? Or is it essentially 1.4 for temporary, and then whatever we have to do to get a permanent, then it's an additional, we can't use, any of those expenditures towards the permanent cost?
That's the current situation. The trailers would be owned by the city and would be left in place until Fourth and Hope and Friends of Mission have the money to build the second phase of the shelter. I think there's probably more probability that there's going to be money available for these types of shelters. So I guess we're optimistic that that money will be available. But essentially, the city is putting up the money to build, this first phase, which is the key part, the places for people to sleep and congregate. And I've been being asked, why are we funding a shelter? And as several people, several council members, and I think the city manager has described, having the homeless on the street is presents all these externalities, and its cost to police, to fire, to county health, to businesses, to homes. So I think there's probably an agreement that we need to do this, but I'm just pointing that out because I get asked rather frequently, why are we spending the money on this? And I think it's because we spend it one way or the other, or the businesses get hit and the residents get hit. So this is money, I think, that we need to do this as quickly as possible, get this thing up and running and get people in there.
I agree. I'm in full support. Have been in support since it was a thought, and we need to push it as fast as we can. And I can't wait till November gets here, so that way we can be able to house more homeless individuals who are in need. So thanks for your leadership, and thanks for those partners such as the county and Fourth and Hope and Walter's House.
Thank you.
Friends of Mission.
I have probably either for Steve or for Ken, and it's this: the operating agreement. I don't see anything here about day services. Where's day services in the scheme of things here?
I'll take a stab and Steve fill in. The current plan and objective is once the shelter is occupied, that the operating agreements with the city and Fourth and Hope will include the provision of day services at this site. There is, still some funding needed to identify to provide that full complement of services out there, including the case management. But all partners are working towards that objective, and I am confident we will be able to find a solution to ultimately make that happen. So that is the intent. The project is being built to accommodate that, and I believe we will get there.
Great. Thank you very much. That answers my question. Hearing no other questions, should be a public comment on this. I think, why not? Madam Clerk, comment on this item.
We have none.
Anybody standing by with a waving hand?
Yeah, we do have one attendee, Scott Thurman, that would like to speak.
Scott.
Hello, Mr. Mayor and council members, and this is Scott Thurman from the Mission, and I just wanted to share how much we appreciate the city's partnership with East Beamer Way, and we're looking forward to continuing to partner with you all. And also, I just want to mention as well the staffing that you all provide for the shelter project. We just appreciate that. And so we're looking forward to building the next phase and the 61 units. Thank you.
Thank you, Scott. Hearing no further comments, is there a motion? And I believe that we can do, hey, just a moment. I believe that council for the city okayed the idea of having all 8 at one time. Is that correct?
Yes. Yes,
Thank
that's
you.
correct. You could, though, Steve still had right to show all 8 actions.
Mayor Landsberg,
Yes.
may I second Councilwoman Rodriguez's motion?
Motion by Rodriguez, the second by Stallard. Madam Clerk?
Thank you. Councilmember Barajas?
Yes.
Councilmember Fernandez?
Yes.
Mayor Landsberg?
Yes.
Councilmember Rodriguez?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Stallard?
Yes.
Thank you. Item 29 carries on a 5-0 vote.
Let's go out and build it, guys.
Yeah, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Steve.
Thank you, Steve. That takes item L, adjournment. I see that Councilman Fernandez is yawning. He's probably past his bedtime. Recently, the city lost a legend in the form of Mr. Fred Roche. Remember Fred Roche? Fred was born in Woodland and graduated from Woodland High School in 1964. Fred was often seen cruising on Main Street when cruising was the thing to do in Woodland. Fred was also one of the instigators of the old cruise night on the first Saturday of every August. For so many years, Fred could be seen in his hot rod 1931 Model A truck painted in bright Big Bird yellow. Fred was known as a custom car builder and a hot rod mechanic. Many people in Woodland, in California, and yes, the United States, own classic cars and hot rods worked on by Fred. Rest in peace, Freddie Broche. Good night.
Rich, may
Yes.
we also add an additional memorial adjournment for Dr. Bob Edmondson?
Oh, yes.
Bob was with Woodland Clinic for many, many years, a hematologist. He taught for 27 years at the UC Davis School of Medicine. He was a founder of the Woodland Presbyterian Church and played the organ there for 40 years. He also was one of the founders of the Woodland Community Singers, and he led that group for many, many years also. Always a very happy man and contributor to our community. So let's add Bob Edmondson to that memorial adjournment.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. With that, we'll adjourn at 8:46 p.m. Good night.
Good night.